Have you ever spent 40 hours on a single trophy? Not a platinum trophy, one single trophy. By working on this trophy, you weren't working on any other trophies at that time. You just had that one goal, that one trophy to work on, and it was really, really hard. Well, in this video I'm going to talk about my Magnus Opus, the trophy that I worked on so much, the trophy that probably is singly the hardest trophy I've ever earned, I've ever achieved, and that is the Dominator trophy from Remnant from the Ashes, more specifically from the survival mode. If you played the game, you will know that it's not too difficult of a platinum trophy, coming in around 60 hours. Remnant from the Ashes is a Souls-like third-person shooter post-apocalyptic game where you get put into this world, you clear dungeons, you clear worlds shall I say, and at the end of each world there is a world boss. Along the way there's lots of different environments, lots of different enemies, and 2 bosses in each world. So you fight 3 bosses per world. There's 4 or 5 worlds in the base game, and each boss is different, and not only that, it's random which boss you get. In a world of 3 bosses, there's easily 9 different bosses you could face, so there's lots of replayability there, and I do really love this game through and through. It's probably one of my favourite games on the PlayStation 4. It came out of nowhere and it's just absolutely fantastic. And I've done a platinum review on this game, so if you'd like to watch my full review in depth, you can do that by clicking the link down below. But in this video I just want to talk about that one trophy, the one trophy that really tested me, the Dominator trophy. Now, what was this trophy? This was for defeating 10 bosses in a row in survival mode, which was the DLC. Now, what is survival mode, you may be wondering, to give you a bit of clarity, a bit of understanding as to why this was so hard. So this game is based upon building up your own builds, choosing the weapons that you love, upgrading the weapons that you have, picking the armor set that suits your style of play, playing with friends. That's kind of the base Remnant from the Ashes, changing your mods on the fly to face certain bosses. Well, survival mode strips all of that away and it kind of dumps you in this hub world with kind of nothing at your hands, nothing at your fingertips. It forces on you roguelike elements, so by this I mean basically you are put into the world, you start with nothing, you start with like 1,000 scrap, which is enough to buy usually 1 gun, 1 mod or 1 piece of armor, and you basically make your way through. You collect scrap as you level up, as you finish each wave. Now, a wave consists of 1 world, 1 dungeon with a boss at the end, and every 3 waves you face a world boss. Typically these are bigger, harder bosses. Some of them are really easy, but some of them are disgustingly hard, especially as you get further on into the survival mode. So the goal of this trophy is to finish 10 waves in a row. At the end of each boss you go back to the hub world, you can then spend your currency, change your weapons, buy different mods, upgrade your character, but you never have enough to ever build a full set, and the weapons in the shop are random every time and you only get a choice of 2 or 3, so it's not like you can go in and pick your favourite weapon every single time. You may not even get offered it throughout an entire playthrough, so there's so much randomness to this run. And with skill, with practice, it'll take you between 8 and 12 minutes to finish each wave. Now, it's worth noting as well, there's a timer in the top left hand screen at all times, and basically you level up your character as you progress through, but as you level up your character, the world levels up as well. So every 8 to 10 minutes I think is a timer that levels up, and the bosses level up, the enemies level up, they all take more damage, they all deliver more damage, they all can take more damage, the bosses deliver more, they unlock more movesets. So it's not only do you have to make your way through survival, you have to do it at such a speed so that you can always be a couple levels above the actual game. But because each dungeon can take between 8 to 12 minutes, you're looking at, to finish a full run of 10 bosses, between 2 hours and 2 hours 15 straight. So it's worth mentioning, obviously, if you die, that's it, done. You have to start the entire survival run again. New weapons, new scrap, new mods, all randomized again, different bosses, and that makes it so difficult because you don't know which boss you're going to face. Some bosses are a cakewalk. There's over 25 bosses in this game, and easily 15 of them are all very doable. 10 are probably quite easy, 15 are all doable. Then you have the 10 left. 6 or 7 of them are very tough. On that day they're going to beat you, and then there's the 4 or 5 which are just disgustingly hard, which will really push you. Some of them, if you get them on a late end of a run, are just a run ender regardless. So what makes this so hard? I've kind of already sort of touched on this a little bit, but what I would say is there's a few things. When you first start, so when I played the survival mode, I'd only been playing Remnant for about 50 hours, which is a long time, don't get me wrong. I spent most of it in co-op though, and in single player on the survival mode, you really have to learn the game mechanics first and foremost. If you don't know how to play the game, you will struggle. Kind of like Bloodborne in the sense that when you get to Chalice Dungeon, if you've not been learning to parry, you've just been sort of cheesing the system, when you hit the Chalice Dungeon, it is one big slap in the face. It's the same with survival mode for Remnant from the Ashes, and not only do you have to learn the game, you don't have the weapons that you've been using throughout your story in the base game. As you play the base game, you know, you realise your style of play, you realise you like certain guns, you like certain mods, you like certain armor sets. Well, that's all taken away from you because you probably will not be able to have a full armor set in this run because they're all randomly given to you. You only get the choice of 1 to 2 legs, chest or armor pieces per survival, per wave, so it's not like you'll get a full set at any point in the whole game, and some sets just in the base game are not made for this kind of quick dash combat that you have to do in the survival mode. So you're going to spend the first 4 or 5 waves kind of just building up currency, trying to find actually good guns that will suit your style of play, and learning to get through the levels faster than you've probably ever done. But I have already touched on it, and the biggest, most challenging thing in this mode is just miles away from the having to actually get good at the game, is just the goddamn bosses. Now, as I've said, there's a lot of bosses in this game. Some of them are fairly straightforward, some of them are very easy, but the key thing in here is basically the fact that these bosses, they level up with the game. As I mentioned that timer earlier on, basically when you get to the late stage of the game, so you know, wave 6, 7, 8, 9, the enemies that you face, the bosses that you face, have such different move sets that are so much more aggressive. That's basically like facing the same boss in such different ways. So I would say there's 3 different versions of each boss in this base game, meaning that basically you have to learn 75 different move sets, which is just, as you can imagine, close to impossible because there's always a random variation. Again, it's just like the amount of time you actually get to practice against these bosses is so slim that you just never really master any of the bosses. I played this game all in all for about 150 hours, and I would say I only mastered 5 to 6 bosses' entire movesets completely. The rest of them was a lot of, you know, still learning, understanding the mechanics of the game so you can kind of keep getting by, but always still getting blindsided by a new moveset or a new movement that you just were not expecting from each boss. So the best example is a boss called Riptide, who is this enemy who basically divides himself as you damage him, and when he divides himself, he's a bigger target, there's more of him, and they all take damage, but they all have more attacks. And in stage 1 to 5, he will only multiply himself 4 to 5 times, and they'll do stun lock, so they just send out like a blast, like a shockwave, and basically you have to roll through it each time. So basically, if there's 5 of them, that's 5 shockwaves you have to roll through in quick succession. It takes a lot of a hit to your stamina, and if you get hit once, you get hit by all 5 of them. In stage 8 or 9, he multiplies himself to about 15. So on that, he does the same stun lock shockwave. So if you have to then dodge through 15, which realistically you probably don't have enough stamina to do, you have to get through about 10. So if it doesn't kill you, which you basically will as it's an AoE, you basically then have to try and recover your health and try and get away from him best you can. But there's 15 of them on the screen, it's basically impossible to do so. And as well, in the late stage as well, not only this, while he's doing his shockwave or shortly after, he will then start to regenerate. So while you're running around trying to recover your health, he is just in the corner having a great time reviving himself. It is one hell of a mug off. So another thing that really made this difficult was the Barbed Terror. Now he is the hardest boss in the game without a doubt. What I loved about Bloodborne, I platinumed Bloodborne, I had a great time doing it. The Chalice Dungeons was definitely difficult, I struggled a lot with Amygdala, and I found that it was frustrating but fair, and it took me about 4 to 5 hours of playing against Amygdala to actually beat him. That's 5 hours of constant playing, constantly going and dying, so probably about maybe 50 to 60 attempts. The Barbed Terror is not that, especially towards the end of the survival mode. So if you get him from wave 7 to 10, it's basically you just can't beat him. I found that anyway. His attacks do so much damage that basically most of his attacks will take off 80 to 100% of your health. Sometimes they'll one-shot you, sometimes they won't. But he does a lot of chaining attacks, and it's just so deadly, so frustrating. He can poison you as well, so it's kind of like there's just so much going on, and I feel like his moves are so difficult to avoid, and he has so much health. The battle goes on easily for 5 to 6 minutes, which is such a long time for a boss battle. And 6 minutes knowing that he can AoE kill you at any time is just disgustingly frustrating, and I found myself dying against him every single time. I don't think I ever beat him in the survival mode in the late stage of the game. So yeah guys, as I mentioned, the bosses are disgustingly hard, but there's one thing that kind of you don't account for when you're going for these sort of roguelike long trophies, which is kind of like you have to concentrate for a long period of time, which is the pressure and the goddamn nerves. When I was getting to like wave 7, so I just defeated the second world boss, you face a world boss at stage 3, 6 and 9, that's when the nerves started to hit me, because I knew that if I faced a boss that had a AoE or was one of those difficult ones like Riptide or the Barb of Terror, I knew I was going to be defeated straight away. I knew there was no chance I could do it, and that pressure really builds up on you, and you kind of feel like when you get that far, when you're an hour and 45 minutes into a run and you die, it's so hard to pick the controller up and go again because you feel so physically exhausted. And I think because it requires so much skill for such a concentrated period of time, that it really fries your brain. I've done massive grinds all of the time, like Dragon Quest 11, football games, things like that. And I think that when you do a grind and it's mundane, it's a bit tiring, but it's okay because you're not stressing yourself out. But when you're doing something where the slightest movement could end a run, which would waste 2 hours of your time, the pressure really mounts and it becomes really difficult. I've never sweat at a game before other than this game. I used to check my watch after every boss because my heart rate was like 130 beats per minute, which, if you don't know, for someone sitting down is disgustingly high because your heart rate is racing because so much is going on, your adrenaline is really flowing. That does mean, however, that when I finally got this trophy, I literally screamed for joy. I literally was like texting people, but I've finally done it. I feel like the weight has been lifted and the amount of bliss I felt for beating this game and getting that trophy was just absolutely phenomenal. Would I do it again? I don't know if I could put myself through it. It took me 40 hours of playing this game. Sometimes a run would last me 15 minutes and I would make the smallest mistake and die. Other times I'd be getting to wave 9, wave 10. I think I got to wave 10 about 6 times before I finally did it. And that for me was just soul destroying. In the end, I finally did it, and I'm happy to say that I earned the Dominator trophy in Remnant from the Ashes, the DLC, the survival mode, which I encourage you. It's only a 7.76% rare trophy, and I feel like just because this game is so hard, it's definitely the single hardest trophy I've ever done, but if I compare it to, say, like Bloodborne, it is miles ahead in terms of difficulty of Bloodborne. Bloodborne was like a different kind of difficulty because it was only the bosses in the Chalice dungeons where, you know, it's a 5-minute fight, you just have to get through the 5 minutes, whereas this game was literally, okay, he has 2 hours, the game is going to get harder as it goes on, you have to be on your A game for such a long period of time, that I just think it's unrivaled, this difficulty, to a lot of games. There is obviously games out there like Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus, which has, you know, doing permadeaths, but that's what this game is essentially. It's a 2-hour permadeath, which gets harder as the time goes on. And for me, someone who's not the best gamer in the world, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm an amazing gamer, you know, I'm pretty average. It was difficult, and I'm proud I did it. So on that, let me know down below, what was your hardest trophy, single trophy that you've ever earned? I would love to know. I'm sure people down below would like to see your subtle flexes. Thank you very much for watching this video. Do not forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy. And I've died. Great start, PlatinumBro.